Hi and welcome to Inquiry. This will be the third video on libertarianism. In this video we will evaluate libertarianism as a system of governance. In the previous two videos we firstly evaluated libertarianism as a theory of rightness and wrongness, and then secondly as a theory of redistributive justice. Those two videos will be linked down in the video description below. Here's a quick summary of the conclusions of those two videos. In the first video, where we evaluated libertarianism as a theory of rightness and wrongness, it was concluded that it fails to make sense as a theory of such. The reason for this was that although libertarianism does offer an intuitive and seemingly persuasive answer to why paradigmatic examples of wrongful actions, such as for example rape, theft and murder are wrong, it fails to accommodate all types of wrongful actions. This is to say that according to libertarianism, an action is wrong if and only if it violates someone's negative rights. And in cases such as rape, murder, theft, the problem with those actions does indeed seem to be that they do violate someone's negative right, i.e. the right to be the master of their own body, the right to have control over their own autonomy, and so on and so forth. The problem, however, was that there are many actions which are considered wrong cross cultures, cross theories, cross hypotheses, and just intuitively are wrong, such as for example lying, betraying someone's secrets, cheating on your partner, which the libertarian theory of rightness and wrongness cannot explain why they are in fact wrong. In fact, the libertarian theory of rightness and wrongness has to conclude that those actions are correct. The reason for this is because when I lie, when I cheat on my partner, when I betray someone's secrets, unless I am contractually obliged not to do so, I am not violating anyone's negative rights. Hence, libertarianism has to conclude that those actions are not wrong. This seems highly problematic. This is problematic enough to reject libertarianism as a theory of rightness and wrongness because it fails to explain all the data points that we want the theory to explain. Secondly, in the second video, we evaluated libertarianism as a theory of redistributive justice. We argued in that video that libertarianism as a theory of such needs to be engaged with properly. That is, many people want to dismiss it offhand because libertarianism as a theory of redistributive justice concludes that all taxation is wrong, and people are very uncomfortable with this conclusion. However, we argue that it's not just easy to dismiss this conclusion that libertarianism reaches, because the argument behind it is rather strong. The argument in its very simple and reductive form being something akin to the fact that we own our own bodies, our right to own our own bodies is a right that only makes sense if we also own the free movement with our own bodies. Now that means that we must own the labor that we make with the free movement of our own bodies. Otherwise, we wouldn't in fact own our own bodies. If we do, but taxation, of course, violates the ownage of the free movement of our own bodies insofar as it violates our full entitlement and our full claim to the production of the free movement of our own bodies, i.e. our labor. However, although libertarianism as a theory of redistributive justice needs to be seriously engaged with, and more precisely has part of the correct story to tell about any and all pictures of redistributive justice, it fails to tell the full picture and it fails to have the full story. The reason for this is because it seems to be all these other states of affairs which we also violate, or which we also consider to be unjust. For example, if I'm born into this earth and some people own all resources, I am completely at their mercy. If they just choose to not show me any mercy, I will die due to starvation because I can't access the resources, then libertarianism will consider such a state to be just, because that state doesn't involve any violations of anyone's right to their own body. Now, intuitively, such a state seems very unjust. We made arguments for why that is the case in the video that can be checked out. Hence, it does not seem to be the case that libertarianism can offer the full picture of a theory of redistributive justice. But what needs to be the case, and this was the conclusion of that video, is that we balance competing claims of redistributive justice to get a fully, truly coherent picture of what the state of redistribution that is just looks like. Now, that means, for example, that we do acknowledge the fact that taxation to some extent violates people's right to their own body, but we do simultaneously acknowledge that sometimes we must violate people's right to their own body in order to balance countervailing considerations of justice. Okay, in this video then, we will look at libertarianism as a theory of governance. Now, you might say, well, how are we supposed to make sense of this? Because if we have concluded that libertarianism as a theory of rightness and wrongness does not make sense, and that libertarianism as a theory of redistributive justice fails to give us the full picture of justice, then what does it even mean to have libertarianism or hold libertarianism to be the correct view of governance? And this is actually a bit of a mystery, I think, also. So what that would mean mean something akin to the fact that, well, I do acknowledge that libertarianism as a theory of rightness and wrongness does not make sense, and I acknowledge it cannot paint the full picture of redistributive justice. But I do think that libertarianism as a system of governance, the way we arrange our governmental institutions, just is the best system, right? Now, but here we're of course invoking the term best, or the best of, or the best possible, right? Now, the easiest way to make sense of this is to make sense of it in terms of, well, it's this system of governance which has the best consequences, or it has the best utility, or something akin to that. Now, the problem here, of course, is that if this is the way in which we justify libertarianism as a system of governance, then we have moved out of the framework of being libertarians, right? So we're no longer libertarians, we're in fact utilitarians or consequentialists of some sort. So this is presumably a move that libertarians wouldn't want to make. Unfortunately, one sees libertarians make this move all the time. They say, when they're pressed in an argument or cornered in a debate on their claims regarding libertarianism being the correct theory of rightness and wrongness, or being the true and complete theory of redistributive justice, and they can't get out of that corner, then they often retort to saying something akin to, well, even if you are correct in that, then I still think libertarianism is the best system of governance. Of course, this is a rather incoherent picture to have once you start thinking about it. Why is this the case? Because by saying it's the best system of governance, they're invoking another conception of goodness and rightness and wrongness than the one that naturally flows from the libertarian conception of rightness, wrongness, and goodness, right? So, from the libertarian conception of rightness, goodness, and wrongness, it flows that minimal government is the correct type of government. But the reason it's the correct type of government is because that is the moral government and that is the just government. And the reason it's the moral government and the reason it's the just government is because that's the type of government that best adheres with the libertarian theories of rightness and wrongness, or what is morally right and wrong, that is, and of what is just and unjust. Now, it can't cohere with that principle once they're making the even if move, right? So once they're making the move that even if you're correct about libertarianism as a theory of rightness and wrongness and of redistributive justice, we should still have it as our system of governments because it's the best. So best there cannot be indexed to the libertarian principles of rightness and wrongness and or justice, right? Now this picture seems pretty incoherent because presumably we would want our system of governance to be in accordance with our best theory or our preferred theory or our correct theory of what is morally right and wrong and what is just and unjust. It seems a bit strange to prefer a system of governance on consequentialist reasons or utilitarian reasons, if we simultaneously also think or are forced to think due to the flow, the dialectic of the debate, that it is not the best general theory of rightness and wrongness or best general theory of justice. Hence, the upshot of what I'm trying to get to here is that if you are a libertarian and you have been presented with persuasive arguments as to why libertarianism as a theory of morally right and wrong actions or as a theory of redistributive justice does not make sense, then you cannot at that point make the move, well, even if that's correct, we should still have libertarianism as the system of governance because it's the best system of governance. Because the concept of best there is a different concept of best than the one that adheres within the libertarianism framework. Now, of course, if you're a utilitarian, however, or you are a consequentialist, then you are open to preferring a libertarian system of governance. Because you can, of course, think that actually a libertarian system of governance, a libertarian arrangement of governmental institutions, is in fact what does make best sense of our governmental practices, in the sense that that is the arrangement of governmental institutions that best maximizes utility or gives the best consequences. But notice crucially here that the terminology of a libertarian system of governance here is only a proxy terminology, right? It is not in fact the way to arrange governmental institutions on this picture. They are in fact arranged in a utilitarian way or a consequence maximizing way. It's just the fact that they can call it a libertarian system of governance because it looks very much like the libertarian system of governance would look like if you were a libertarian, right? Now, there are utilitarians and there are consequentialists who do believe this about the governance, that it ought to be arranged in this libertarian-esque way. But they, of course, arrive there from very different reasons than from what a libertarian does. And crucially, they arrive there for different reasons than a libertarian can, because the libertarian doesn't have the resources within his theoretical framework to arrive at that point of governance if it's been shown that his theory of rightness and wrongness is insufficient, and if it's been shown that his theory of redistributive justice does not capture the full picture of the truth vis-a-vis redistributive justice. Then as for the question of whether libertarianism as a theory of as a system of governance justified on consequentialist and or utilitarian terms is in fact correct, i.e. if it's in fact true that such an arrangement of governmental institutions is this an arrangement which best maximizes utility or best maximizes consequences of some kind? Well, that is a question that is beyond the scope of this video, and is a question that depends on many difficult empirical questions. I do, however, want to note one thing, that any paper that purports to show that a libertarian arrangement of governmental affairs is the arrangement which is best gonna maximize consequences or utility of some kind is a paper that one should look upon with a bit of suspicion. The reason for this is because at the very best, the papers can offer some type of evidence akin to the fact that, well, the economic system does better when the government is out of it, or school does better when the government stays out of it, or hospital and medicine and medicinal practices perform better when the government is out of it. The problem with any such paper that purports to use those pieces as evidence for the broad sweeping and general conclusion that a libertarian system of governance is the system of governance that best maximizes utility or consequences of some kind is that they, of course, the papers themselves, of course, exist and operate within the paradigm of this current system of governance, which is not a libertarian one. The point here is that it's going to be very, very hard, perhaps impossible, I don't know, but it's going to be very, very hard to really justify the conclusions that a whole overhaul in our system of governments to a libertarian one is going to be utility maximizing, just because on grounds that it's very hard to do counterfactual assessments of that kind, right? It's very hard to say, well, this completely new state of affairs is going to be one that better maximizes utility as ours than ours compared to our state of affairs. And you cannot really use pieces of evidence that are derived from our state of affairs to justify this counterfactual state of affairs, because you are still operating with evidence that only makes sense within our state of affairs. Anyhow, that is the conclusion of inquiry's engagement with libertarianism.